Hey everybody, how's it going? And welcome back to another video. So today marks a week since Killswitch Engage's latest album, This Consequence, was released. So I've had some time to sit on it, mull over it, and think about where I think that this album will inevitably land stacked up against the rest of the band's discography. So what better way to do it than tier lists? So I figured I'd just use this as an opportunity to also rank the rest of their albums as well and see where those land. Commence the heresy. All right, here we are. But before we get into anything blasphemous, I'll just give you guys a quick rundown as to how I usually grade things and where they typically fall. So a C for me is like a 5 out of 10. It's middle of the road. Typically anything that falls in here, usually it'll just be like the singles are the best part of the album kind of thing. I don't think anything that falls below being average or just kind of can have anything. If it has nothing redeemable about it, it's just going to be an F. So we just go immediately from average to okay, it's garbage. But this would be like a 5 to a 5.9. Then you'd have your B's, which would be like a 6 to a 6.9. A would be a 7 to a 7.9. S 8 to 8.9, and then anything an S plus is like a 9 and above. So this will basically be reserved for albums that are pretty much just masterpieces, or at least they're as close to perfect as you can get. All right, so let's get into it. Let's start off with Killswitch's first album and first self-titled album, Killswitch Engage. Easily goes into S. Now I can see a lot of people probably being like, what do you mean? Why is this not an S plus? And I'll give you a reason why, but we'll get to that point in a second. But this album has a lot of really, really great moments to it and a lot of heavy moments to it. Like this is arguably, even the Killswitch now, even with all the way up to This Consequence, it almost kind of sounds like two separate bands. There is an edge, a rawness, and like a rawness that this album and this era of the band had that still to this day I don't think they've been able to recapture. I mean, you've got Irreversible, Soilborn. It's got a lot of really heavy hitters on this album. So in my opinion, I think that this is a fantastic debut album really for the band and still holds up all these years later. Now the reason why this goes into S tier is because okay, I'm sorry, I'm kidding. I'm joking. No, this goes immediately up into S+. This is exactly the reason why the first album I consider to be an S. And then I would say that the top shelf edition, especially of the follow-up album, Alive or Just Breathing, is absolutely S+. It basically took everything that the first album did fantastic and just improved upon it. Like I could not sit here and say that these two albums are in the same league as each other. They're both fantastic, but I would absolutely have to say that Alive or Just Breathing is a better album than their first self-titled album is. Great song, Fixation on the Darkness, My Last Marinade for all you barbecue fans. You really cannot go wrong with this album at all. Like it is just everything that the first album had cranked up to 11. Moving on to their 2004 album, after Jesse had left and now we got Howard. Not even up for debate. That's it. I did it. I know there's going to be a lot of Jesse fans that might not approve of that, but I think that this album is absolutely on the same level as the previous album, Alive or Just Breathing. But this album brings a lot more of a melody and definitely much more of a radio-friendly aspect to it. I'm not going to argue with that. It's definitely much more of a palatable mainstream tone and sound than something off of their first two albums. However, this album, in my opinion, it's fantastic. It's genuinely just fantastic front to back. There are no skips on this album. Every single song has an incredible hook. Every single song stands out, and Howard's voice is really just angelic the entire time. His voice is so unique and stands out so well that it kind of, not to get too far into the Howard versus Jesse aspect, but there, in my opinion, there is a reason why this band was as commercially successful during the Howard era by comparison to how they are currently, just in general with Jesse. Like that's not a slight on Jesse. I think Jesse's a fantastic vocalist, but there is an appeal to Howard's vocals, especially with the singing, that it really grabs your attention, which is why I think that this album and the following album did as well as they did. There we go. Immediately up into an S+ again. This is for the same reason I would say as the previous album with End of Heartache. There's no skips on this album. It is fantastic front to back. It contains one of the most influential metalcore songs of the 2000s era metalcore. My Curse. And then if you even get the deluxe version of this album, which I mean, it's pretty readily available now, you get the follow-up to that as well with This Fire. These songs are way too good to not be an S+ tier. And the albums as well, the rest of the material holds up just as well to these hits. And it's quite incredible that these albums were able to be made back to back. So building off of what I was saying before with this, it makes sense why this was, technically speaking, their most commercially successful era with Howard. Now, I'm going to do something that's not necessarily legal. I know a lot of the diehard like gatekeepers for Killswitch are probably like, you know, their Howard Jones radars are going off right now, and they're like, oh no, we got a Howard Jones fan. I genuinely think that this album got a lot more flack and a lot more hate than it deserves, and I think even to this day it still holds up really damn well. Now, was it different? Yes. Has the band even acknowledged that, hence the reason why they don't play anything off of the album? Yes. However, it really was not as bad of an album as people make it out to be. It aged really well, and to be fair, if it's going to be the end of Howard's era, it was a great send-off album. Like, I would not say that it was nearly as bad as people make it out to be. Like, I mean, The Return, Starting Over, a lot of the albums, I'd say the first half of the album in general is pretty solid, and then it starts to wane off a little bit towards the end, but it's a really great album overall. On to Jesse's Returnal. 2013. Oh man, I remember when this album came out. Where do I put this? Where does this go? All right, there's only one place it can go. It's going to go in S. There's a reason why. It has two of probably my most favorite Killswitch songs ever on it, In Due Time and Always. I know that those are the singles, but really, like, In Due Time is just, I don't think anybody can argue that it isn't one of their best songs. I'd say, personally, I think it doesn't get as much love as it should get in general, because I feel like it should be on par with My Curse and A Heartache. Like, really, it is that good of a song. Always is a fantastic, almost aggressive ballad, but it's so good. It's, you know, it's the classic feel switch engage. Like, it is a really, really great song overall. And then the album as a whole is just also fantastic. But I wouldn't say it is of the same caliber as Alive or Just Breathing and A Heartache and As Daylight Dies. But I would say it is absolutely, if I had to point anybody to listen to anything by these guys, it would be these 5 albums without hesitation. And you take these 5 albums, like, really, if you go with their first 4 albums, I don't think you can go wrong. All right, so moving on to, I believe it was 2016 when this came out, but Incarnate. Where is this gonna go? I did it. I'm going to be completely honest. And this is exactly why, going back to my argument I was making before with the Howard era about End of Heartache and As Daylight Dies, this is kind of the reason why I think that Killswitch Engage lost as a band creatively, but also commercially lost momentum. Now, commercially, I don't mean selling out like, oh, okay, they're doing the mainstream shit or just stuff of that nature. I don't care about that. I'm not trying to gatekeep it, but what I mean more so is the band lost steam. The band lost its notoriety amongst the public. Like, if you mention Killswitch Engage, most of the time people are going to mention these 2 albums. Most of the time, especially if they're what a lot of gatekeepers would consider normies. If they're going to name anything, they'll probably recognize End of Heartache or My Curse from something. Especially if, I mean, we're talking about like Guitar Hero back in 2007. But with the Jesse era, you had these problems where these albums, after Disarm the Descent, they just kind of started losing impact. They weren't as up to snuff. They did not feel of the same caliber as these 5 albums. Even we could extend the olive branch in that regard. So I don't know. The album just never really stood out to me. It just kind of always felt like, yeah, the singles are about, that's it, and then nothing else really notable about it. Nothing that makes me want to go out of my way to listen to anything off of this album. If it's on, it's on. Cool. I'm not going to hate it, but I'm also not going out of my way to listen to it. So their 2019 attempt. Where do you think this is going to go? We can't keep Incarnate by itself. We got to give it a friend. Got to make it feel like it's not lonely anymore. Falls into the exact same position as Incarnate, in my opinion. This album had a lot of potential, especially with the singles. The singles did a phenomenal job. Unleashed, Signal Fire, and I Am Broken Too. And you know what? I could even extend it maybe to I Can't Be the Only One, even though that wasn't a single. That was definitely more of a hidden gem, so to speak, on the album as a whole. But even then, I don't find myself really going back to listen to any of the singles off of this album. I'll occasionally feel in the mood to go listen to like Signal Fire specifically, but also got Harvard Jones on it, so it's more of a draw in that regard. But I mean, Unleashed is really good, but other than that, I'm not really going out of my way to listen to these singles, and it feels like the album as a whole really just fell quite flat, and pretty much, like I said, in the exact same position as this. I'd say that this one was a slight improvement over Incarnate, but Atonement was, again, it was just the middle of the road. The art looked sick, but that's about it. So now we're moving a couple months later into 2020, their follow-up to Atonement. Technically, they considered this Atonement 2. I'm gonna put that right there. So now this album it kind of disappointed me because they said that these are B-sides from Atonement, but these B-sides, in my opinion, almost felt better than the A-list tracks that got put on the album. It was kind of baffling because this album really just felt like it was what Atonement should have been. I mean, with Hollow Convictions, I Feel Alive Again, Killing of Leviathan, like these are such good songs, and it's like, why didn't they make them? Why didn't they make the album overall? Because most of the songs off of Atonement, in my opinion, are just really forgettable. These ones stand out a lot more, and hell, even if you replaced 3 of the songs from Atonement with 3 of the B-sides, that's 3 more memorable songs on the album besides just the 3 singles and then I Can't Be the Only One. However, it's kind of funny too, because you could think about it this way, realistically speaking, if you make everything about Atonement what would be considered a B-side besides the singles and I Can't Be the Only One, and you take everything from the B-sides album in 2020, you could have put that together and that could have been Atonement. That would have fit a lot better, in my opinion. That would have been, like, this could have easily, if that was the album, this could have easily been an S-tier album, in my opinion. But ultimately, I just think that the B-side version of this album, or at least the B-sides that never made the album, are far superior than the songs that did make it. This album, to me, is just the what was possible, the what if Atonement was that. All right, the moment you've all been waiting for. Where do I think This Consequence falls? Their latest album, 2025. I kid. I think that this is a drastic improvement over Atonement. The album, what stands out to me is the first half of the album is the best part of it, and then the last half kind of fades off a bit. It falls into a very similar thing with the second self-titled album in 2009 with Howard Jones. Abandon Us, Discordant Nation, I believe, what is it, Forever Aligned? Oh, Aftermath, that's what it is. Those 5 songs out of that is a strong part of the album, and it really holds up well. The latter half, like I said, falters a bit in my opinion. They're not as memorable, but there are definitely redeeming qualities about the song where, it might not be my favorite part of the album, or at least my favorite songs by Killswitch Engage in general, but there are enough redeeming qualities about that latter half of the album where it's something that will definitely grow on me and I can still appreciate, or occasionally will go out of my way to be like, you know what, I want to listen to that. This is definitely an album, in my opinion, where, like I said, it's not blowing me away as a collective, like a whole collective from start to finish, but it is a drastic improvement over the last 2 very meh contributions that we've gotten to their discography in the past couple years. If this is the direction that these guys are going to be going from now on, I think that if they stick to this, they refine it a little bit more, the next album could probably reach up to the S tier. We might actually be able to get another Disarm the Descent from them, which would be awesome, or hell, maybe we can even get another something that could rival their top 3, in my opinion. But yeah, this will wrap up my tier list for their discography and where I think their latest album falls compared to the rest of it. I think this is a great representation, actually, of how I listen to these albums, which ones I choose to listen to or go out of my way to listen to by comparison to the ones I not so much. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. Let me know what I got wrong, because I'll always get something wrong. And I'll catch you guys in the next tier list. Bye.